Hi, Miss Nikki here. Welcome to Chapter 36. We need to talk a little bit about how animals reproduce, and we need to look at male and female anatomy. So first, I've already mentioned asexual reproduction, if you have a single parent that gives rise to offspring that are identical. And then we have sexual reproduction, where we're usually talking about testes and ovaries that are producing egg and sperm. And remember, this is meiosis. These are the places that meiosis is occurring. So everywhere else in your body, mitosis is happening. So if you cut your finger, your skin cells are reproducing by mitosis. Only in the ovaries and testes do we have meiosis happening. You can also read about copulation, just to make sure you understand the word. Sexual union usually involves the penis depositing sperm into the vagina of a female. So the human reproductive system, basically this figure, we should have a general idea of male anatomy. So right here, this is the testis, and it's spelled differently because it's one. If it's plural would be testis. So this is where the sperm are made. This structure right here, the epididymis, this is where sperm are matured. And then this right here is called the vas deferens, or sometimes called the ductus deferens. So sperm travels from the testis through the ductus deferens, up and around through the prostate. You can read, if you would like, about some of the seminal vesicles, the prostate, and the bulbourethral gland, which all contribute to the production of semen. That's the fluid that sperm flow in. So it comes out and then through this tissue, and they're called erectile tissue. If you want more specific, this is the tissue that expands or fills with blood for erection, and this is called the corpus spongiosum. This is what keeps the urethra open so that the sperm can be ejected. So why do I bother showing you this? You need to know that sperm are created in the testis, and what's the process by which sperm are created? It's called meiosis. And then I wanted you to see there's a long pathway in which they have to traverse in order to get out of the body. So this is a enlarged view. This again is the testis, and I wanted to show you all of these little tubules, and inside all of these tubules we're making tons and tons of sperm. And you can see it's a much more complicated process. They are cells that are copying themselves. So again, we have 46 here. We multiply by 2 because we copy all the chromosomes. Ooh, not 96, 92. So we go from 46 to 92, then we go 46, 46, then we go 23, 23, 23, and we end up with 4 sperm. So it's a much more complicated process than we think. So this right here is happening in every little section of all of these tubes, which is why men can produce millions and millions of sperm in their lifetime. So female anatomy. Here is the urethra, here's the bladder, here's the vagina, here's the rectum and the anus. This is the uterus, and up here is the ovary. And the ovary is where we have egg production. And you can read in your book about egg production or oogenesis. But let's look at the ovary, since this is what we need to focus on for the function of producing an egg. So I don't expect you don't have to go through all of these processes. I want you to see that we start off with primary follicles. So women are born with primary follicles. All of the eggs, all of the possible eggs that can develop are primary follicles. They are going to copy themselves, and only one gets selected to grow up into this very large egg. This fluid accumulates, and then that causes the disruption or bursting of this Grapharian follicle, as it's called, and then the oocyte gets ejected. This also has to do with hormones. There's a lot of hormonal action happening here in order for this process to continue. So one of the things you should have noticed is how many sperm did we create? From one cell, we had 4 sperm. In the egg, we have 1 cell, and how many eggs do we get out? 1 egg. Okay, so in this figure, they're trying to show you the events of meiosis 1 and 2 and how they relate to the sperm and the egg coming together, which is fertilization, right? One of the interesting things is that meiosis 2 doesn't happen until the sperm penetrates. So right now, this egg has 46 chromosomes, the sperm has 23. As soon as the sperm breaks to the egg will split off 23 and keep 23, and now those two can come together. So one of the reasons we need to undergo meiosis is if we had 23 for our egg and 23 for our sperm, we end up with 46. This is a normal human, right? Well, what happens if we didn't do meiosis? What happens if we have 46 for an egg plus 46 for sperm, and we put them together, we'd have 92 chromosomes. This is not human, right? So why do we have to do meiosis? We have to have the number so that when we combine them together in fertilization, we get the correct number of chromosomes for our species. Again, this is showing you a little bit about the hormone cycle. I don't want you to pay attention to the hormones, but I do want you to pay attention to the uterine lining and the ovarian cycle. So what we're trying to say with this picture is as the follicle develops into the egg here, so this is ovulation, what do you notice is happening to the lining of the uterus? It's building up. So during ovulation, it takes a couple of days to go from ovulation in the ovary, and this is in the uterus. To get to the uterus takes a couple of days. So right about here is when the egg that's been fertilized with the sperm would end up in the uterus. This is great for implantation. This fertilized egg and sperm need these blood vessels to deliver blood in order for the cell to continue to divide and implant and create an embryo. So why does the lining of the uterus build up? It's waiting for possible egg implantation. Well, what happens if you do not have a fertilized egg? What happens if you do not become pregnant? Then this layer starts sloughing off, and this is where we have menstruation. There are some great paragraphs in your textbook that talk about different birth control methods and also talk about different sexually transmitted diseases. There will be a few questions on the test. I suggest you go through them and just realize at least what the different birth control options are. And then for sexually transmitted diseases, just know the difference between what's a virus, so this is no cure, versus a bacterial infection where you can take antibiotics. The last couple of slides are just talking about fetal development. So I want to make sure, here's a human. This is after uterus implantation. So after the fertilized egg implants, it starts going through this changing process, and there are some layers or membranes that you need to be aware of. So obviously this is the embryo, this is the yolk sac, this is eventually going to go back and become the digestive organs. We have the amnion, and the amnion has amniotic fluid, right? And that amniotic fluid in here helps keep the embryo buoyant or floating. There's a chorion, and this chorion has something to do with this blood supply, and this altogether is called the placenta. We also see the umbilical cord. This is how the fetus is exchanging waste and nutrients with mom. I just wanted to mention real quick, basically that the animals develop more similarly than you think. So since all vertebrates, meaning you have a backbone, so vertebrates meaning backbone, evolved from a common ancestor, the genetic information that guides this embryonic development is nearly the same. What they're trying to say is there's a very unique set of developmental genes, and if you are a vertebrate, then you develop in the same pathway or the same plan pretty consistently. And that's why all of these embryos look very similar. So this one is actually human. This one is some sort of reptile, I don't remember, skink maybe? Lizard. I think this one was the dog, this one was a chicken, and this one is fish. So you can see that even though these are very diverse organisms, that embryologically they all look very, very similar. So this last slide here is showing the stages of birth. Second stage, third stage. So this is when the cervix dilates. So right here is where the cervix is located. It goes from closed to open. Again, we have to have the fetus fitting out of the vagina if we're having a vaginal delivery. Then we have as the baby emerges, and then we have as the placenta and the afterbirth is contracted out. So we have to expel this afterbirth. Remember, this is the layers that were developed by the embryo in order to sustain life inside the mother. Okay, I'll see you next